They say hospitals don't just heal the living, they hold on to the dead. In Pikeville, Kentucky, there once stood a place where the cries of coal miners echoed through whitewashed halls, a hospital built to patch up the broken and to carry the dying to their final breath. It shut its doors decades ago. The walls crumbled, the windows shattered. But the spirits, folks say they never left. Tonight, we're stepping inside one of Kentucky's most terrifying hauntings, the Pikeville Consolidated Coal Hospital. Howdy, friends, and welcome back to Kentucky Melody. Around here, the hills don't just hold beauty and song, they carry stories best whispered after dark. If you've got the spine for it, grab a lantern and walk with me. We're about to step into a place where death was routine. Shadows walk the halls, and ghosts refuse to be discharged. The Consolidated Coal Hospital rose from the mountainside in the early 1920s, a red brick fortress built when coal ruled every man's waking hour. It stood proud then, its tall windows glinting with the light of progress, but beneath that polished veneer was the pulse of something darker. Every brick was mortared with blood and sweat, and the walls seemed to breathe with the rhythm of the mines below. Down in the earth's gut, the tunnels groaned like a living thing, a beast with lungs full of soot and a hunger that never quit. Explosions ripped through the veins of the mountain, shaking homes miles away. Roofs collapsed with the crack of gunfire, and the machinery, those grinding, gnashing contraptions of steel, chewed through flesh and bone like a meal. The injured were dragged out under the yellow glare of carbide lamps, their bodies slick with coal dust and blood so black you couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. They were hauled to that hospital on makeshift stretchers, a parade of broken men crossing through its iron doors. Inside, the air was thick, part disinfectant, part death. The doctors did what they could, their white coats grayed with soot before the day was out. Some men were stitched and sent limping back underground, still coughing up black phlegm, still owing the mine their breath. But most never left. For them, that hospital wasn't salvation. It was a waiting room for the grave. Hundreds met their end beneath its roof. The lucky ones went quiet, whispering the names of wives they'd never see again. Others fought till their last shudder, eyes wide and glassy as the ether took hold. The halls rang with the metallic clang of surgical tools, the hiss of gas lamps, and the slow drip of something you hoped was just water. And when the heartbeat stopped, the silence that followed felt too heavy, like the building itself was swallowing their souls. By the 1980s, the veins of the mountain had run dry. The miners left, and the hospital's windows went dark, but death never truly moved out. Even now, folks say the place hums after midnight. The wind slips through shattered panes carrying whispers too soft to be wind. Boots drag down the hall, slow and uneven, followed by the squeal of rusted wheels as an invisible stretcher rolls past. The old operating room is cold no matter the season. So cold your breath fogs and the floor trembles, as though the earth still remembers the dying that was done there. And if you stand in the right spot when the moonlight spills across the cracked tile, you might see shadows bending over the empty tables, hands working, voices murmuring, tending to men long gone. The living have no business there, for what stirs in those wards ain't flesh and blood anymore. It's the memory of pain made solid, and it's still waiting to finish its shift. Police got called to the old Consolidated Coal Hospital more times than any of them could rightly remember. The place sat there on the hillside like a corpse that hadn't realized it was dead yet, its windows hollow, its bricks sweating rust when the rain hit. Teenagers crawled through busted panes looking for a scare, drunks dared each other to spend a night in the morgue, and ghost hunters came with flashlights and too much confidence. But after a while, even the police stopped thinking of it as just trespass calls. They started whispering about that building the way miners once whispered about cave-ins, quiet and uneasy, like the words themselves might wake something. Officers would step through the front doors, beams from their flashlights cutting through the black, and the air would change. Thick, damp, and cold like it had weight. Radios on their hips started to crackle, not with the usual chatter, but with a strange hiss that sounded almost like breathing. Then came the footsteps, boots on wood, steady and deliberate, echoing from the hallway ahead. They'd follow, guns drawn, only to find padlocked doors and corridors sealed for decades. The noise would stop just long enough for one man to say, "Did you hear that?" And then a door would slam so hard the hinges screamed. But outside, not a leaf stirred, not a single breeze in the trees. Whatever was moving in there didn't come from the wind. Some of the older nurses, those few still alive and willing to talk, claimed the haunting didn't start after the hospital shut down. It started long before, when the wards were still full of men half dead from the mines. They'd see shapes at the edge of the beds, shadows leaning over patients whose names weren't in any chart. One nurse, pale as chalk, told a story she never could shake. A miner named Harlan Wicks, crushed lungs, gone before sunrise. She swore she checked on him an hour after his last breath, only to find him sitting upright in bed, his chest barely lifting, his eyes like dark marbles fixed on nothing. The sheets slipped through his body like smoke, and when she screamed, every light in the hall blinked out at once. When help came, the bed was empty, cold, but the outline of his body was still pressed into the mattress. Years later, when the ghost hunters came with their gadgets and bravado, the hospital seemed almost eager. Recorders clicked on in the stillness, and the stillness talked back. Voices whispered through the static, weak but full of pleading. "Don't leave me here. It hurts. Still burning." Every syllable sounded wet, like it came from a mouth full of dirt. Down the ward, a moan rose up and carried deep and hollow, like air rushing through an abandoned mine shaft. It crawled right into the gut, making men double over and gag from fear alone. One team swore they caught something on camera, a shape darker than shadow, gliding down a corridor that hadn't seen light in 40 years. The figure was tall, wrong somehow. Its movements too smooth, like it floated. Every door on that floor was chained shut, every lock sealed since Reagan was in office. But the thing moved free, drifting past the lens with purpose, pausing, as if it knew it was being watched. They ran, left their gear behind, and never came back. But if you go up there on a still night, some say you can still hear the faint click of their cameras and the hum of their recorders. Still running, still waiting. Because whatever claimed that hospital, it don't much care if the living left. It's still working the night shift. But if you ask folks round here what part of that hospital still breathes evil, They won't point to the wards or the locked hallways. Their fingers go straight to the old operating theater, the room where pain was currency and mercy ran out before the ether did. It's where life and death used to wrestle under a single swinging light, and the walls never forgot which side won. Step through that doorway, and the air changes so sudden it'll steal your breath. It ain't just cool. It's wrong. The kind of cold that don't live in weather. Your lungs seize up and the hair on your arms rises before you even realize why. Each exhale fogs in front of you, hanging there too long, like the room don't want to let it go. The smell hits next, old copper, mold, and something sweeter underneath, like flowers left too long in water. Folks say the walls sweat there, damp streaks trailing down the tile like tears leaking from the stone itself. Visitors tell of things that touch without touching. Invisible hands that grab a man by the shoulders and shove him flat against a table. Cold pressure pushing on his chest till his heartbeat turns wild and desperate. A few come stumbling out after, gasping like they'd been choked, red welts striping their ribs in long straight lines. Thin marks, neat as cuts from a surgeon's scalpel, but no blade ever found, no hand ever seen. Then there's the story that still makes locals go quiet when the night gets long. Happened sometime in the 90s. A fella named Curtis, young, loud, full of whiskey and dare, swore it on his life. He and 3 buddies broke in after midnight, flashlight swinging, boots crunching glass. They were laughing, trying to spook each other till they got near the old elevator shaft. The doors hung open like a dead man's mouth, cables rusted, air thick with the stink of iron and dust. Curtis drifted closer, calling out to hear his own echo bounce back. That's when he heard it. Ding. Soft, gentle, out of place. A bell from nowhere. He turned, and them elevator doors, rusted near shut for years, creaked wide like something alive was breathing behind him. Inside stood a nurse, pale as bone, eyes sunk deep but steady, her cap perched proper, her dress clean and pressed, though the air around her shimmered like heat off asphalt. She didn't speak, didn't blink, just raised her hand, palm open, inviting him inside. Curtis said her smile weren't human. It was stretched too taut, fixed like she'd been wearing it 100 years and forgot how to stop. He ran. Said the hall seemed to stretch forever, his flashlight flickering, boots pounding on tile that echoed like drums. Behind him came the sound of the elevator doors slamming shut, hard enough to make the walls tremble. Then came the rumble, low and deep, as if the old lift had found life again. It groaned, screeched, and sank, the cables screaming in the dark, too. But here's the part no one laughs off. That elevator ain't been powered since the late 70s. The shafts collapsed, sealed in concrete. Still, on the quietest nights, when the moon hits the windows just right, some swear they hear that same chime, soft, sweet, almost polite. Then the cables start to move, dragging something heavy down into blackness. And down there, past where the light can reach, the nurse is still waiting, hand outstretched, smile unbroken, welcoming the next fool who forgets that some doors ain't meant to open. The old Consolidated Coal Hospital's gone now. Every brick pulled down, every window shattered to sand. The weeds took it first, curling through the foundation like green fingers reclaiming what was stolen. Then came the years, slow and cruel, till all that was left was a scar on the hillside. But around here, folks will tell you the same thing. Land don't forget. Not when it's been soaked through with blood and ether and sorrow so thick it seeps clean to the bone. Dirt remembers. They say, if you drive that back road after dark, keep your eyes on the hill or don't, depending on what kind of soul you've got. Because now and then, out of the corner of your eye, you'll see it. A single window hanging there in the dark. Not a structure, not even a frame. Just light. Pale yellow, soft and sickly, like lamplight spilling from a room that don't exist anymore. It flickers once, steady as breath, and then it's gone. Folks who've seen it say the silence that follows ain't natural. The air goes thick, and your skin prickles like something standing close behind you, waiting for you to notice. Others swear they've heard it. The old hospital calling itself back from the grave. A static hum drifting out over the field, faint as a memory. It starts with a low buzz, just enough to make the hairs on your neck rise. Then comes a whisper, a woman's voice, muffled, tired, fighting through the crackle. No one can make out the words, but it sounds like she's reading a list. Names, maybe. Names of men who never got to clock out. Folks who pull over to listen say the static fades only when they drive away, like the signal don't want to be left behind. The hospital might be gone, but its heartbeat's still somewhere under the dirt. Some reckon the last patients never left, just waiting their turn under the soil, their spirits lined up for care that never came. They say on certain nights, when the moon's full and the fog lays low, you can almost see 'em. Silhouettes moving in rows, the faint glint of stretchers rolling through weeds that ain't supposed to move. So if you ever find yourself driving that stretch past where the hospital once stood, don't stop, don't slow down, because what's gone ain't truly gone. And what's still there knows the sound of engines, knows the pulse of the living. And if the dirt remembers, then it also hungers. So, what do y'all reckon? Were the hauntings of Pikeville's old coal hospital just ghost tales meant to spook teenagers sneaking around? Or did the spirits of them miners dig their heels in, refusing to be hauled out with the rubble? Let me leave you with this. If you had the chance, would you step foot inside that operating room, let the cold wrap around you, and wait in the silence for something to move in the dark? Or would you keep your eyes on the road, driving past that hill and praying you never hear the whisper of that intercom calling your name? I want to hear from y'all. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, 'cause I got a feeling this story ain't near finished. And if you love riding along with us through Kentucky's darker hollers and haunted hills, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next story waiting in the shadows. If you'd like to help us keep Kentucky Melody going, consider joining up with our Backwoods Believers. You'll get extra perks, exclusive stories, and you'll be part of the folks who make sure these tales keep echoing through the mountains. Until next time, keep your lantern close, your doors locked, and your ears open. You never know what's still walking out there in coal country.